This is a Twister, a 28-foot British-built yacht, moulded by Tyler Mouldings in Tunbridge in Kent, and completed by Upham's Boatyard in Brixham in Devon. They were designed by Kim Holman, as in Holman and Pye. This one was built in 1965, and it's a very early fibreglass model. They were originally built in wood, and are based on the Sterling, which was 29-foot. Twister's a 28-foot. There's the twisted knot motif on the bow, so you can see that it's a Twister. It's got a gold caviter line around it. I scrape away the hull in about 30 places below the waterline when I'm doing a survey, and I need to scrape off the anti-fouling to be able to check for moisture and check for blistering underneath it. So the Twister has got an unusual construction because they've got a fiberglass hull but a composite superstructure. So the deck is fiberglass, but the coach roof is timber. It's plywood and hardwood. On the later models they had an all fiberglass superstructure, so the coach roof was fiberglass as well. These are small blisters just a bit above the waterline on the hull, and there's larger blisters on the rudder, but there weren't any blisters below the waterline on the hull, which is good. So that's a blue gel coat. It has been painted as well, but those blisters are between the laminate and the gel coat. So those are what's called wicking blisters. So the fibres of the fiberglass absorb water and wick upwards and then start to blister away. I'm looking at the stave bearing there. So in this case it is actually a cutlass bearing. It's rubber, but originally it would have had a white metal stave bearing. Those are the blisters on the rudder, which is very common. It's not too much of a problem. Quite often yachts like this would have had a timber rudder which would have been covered in sheathed in fiberglass. This one's an all fiberglass rudder, and those holes that you can see, those are the sinker and riser holes where foam would have been poured into the void between the two shells of the rudder. That's the paint coming away above the waterline, but it has got a blue gel coat. Below the waterline it was epoxied. There's a epoxy resin coating over it to help prevent water ingress, but that has failed in time, and it probably didn't adhere properly in the first place, so it's peeling off. So you can see the epoxy is just coming off in my fingers. I'm now scraping away the anti-fouling. Do that in about 30 places to be able to check for moisture. You can see the epoxy there. This is a Sovereign Moisture Master surface moisture meter. It only looks for moisture on the surface. What you do is you take a reading above the waterline and then take readings below and compare them. So these readings were actually quite low. It was only 4 above the waterline, and it's between 4 and 12 below. Much higher on the rudder, which is normal. But on the surface those readings were low because the survey was done on a dry day and the boat had been ashore for a while anyway. So a Sovereign will only do the surface, and now I'm going to move over to a Tramix meter which penetrates much further through the laminate and takes readings, moisture meter readings, well inside the laminate instead. So you take readings above the waterline, in this case around 12, but below the waterline it's over the range of the scale, so it's outside the range, so that means that the readings are high, but that's well inside the laminate. So Tramix meters are quite sensitive, and they often give very high readings. I'm now checking for delamination using a plastic faced hammer. There's no delamination, but what there is detachment of the epoxy. And those loose soundings there there are actually things inside, lockers inside the boat. The deck is fibreglass on this twister, but the coach roof is made out of plywood and mahogany and teak, and the top is sheathed in cask over cloth and resin. Looking for delamination, and also looking for rot in the plywood and the hardwood. So I'm using a fairly blunt screwdriver, tapping with the plastic end of the screwdriver and then probing with the screwdriver itself. The deck is a one-piece, very thin fiberglass deck. There's no stiffening, it hasn't got a balsa core, it hasn't got a foam core, it's just very thin fiberglass, single sheet of fiberglass. Cockpit's hardwood, so teak and mahogany. Looking on the aft deck there as well, looking for movement, looking for flexing whilst holding onto the boat at all times. I am wearing deck shoes, by the way. Those are not just outdoor trainers, they're for decks. You can see sunlight shining through the deck there, and you can see the teak and mahogany of the superstructure. Those transverse beams are what stiffen the superstructure, and they're just the same as they will be if it was a wooden boat. New Anderson winches, self-tailors. This boat is unusual because it's got doors instead of washboards for the main hatch, and what you have to do is put a cover over it because they will let in water. So they're not the original doors, they're retrofitted, and as you can see they don't fit properly. Very basic galley, nice interior, vinyl seats, so not particularly comfortable but in good condition. Gone back on the deck to check for movement, which is always a big problem, and looking for rot and looking for leaks. There is some cracking on the deck, which is not surprising, that's quite common on that kind of deck. Nothing you can do about those cracks, they're in there forever. There's not much point in repairing them because they'll just come back again. It's got a moulded in non-slip texture. Now going on to the batteries. The batteries are low on power, so I'd replace them. I'd like you to get closer now to look at the figures. And the port side batteries defective because the indicator was in the black, so I'd replace both of those batteries. Check the electrics. Can't start the engine though because the boat's ashore, so I do that during the sea trial. But check the VHF radio and all the instruments. The gas locker on old boats is usually a bit of a challenge, and this one the gas bottles are in quite a poor position. That isn't a draining gas locker there. You can see the fuel tank to the left. Nice fuel tank, but not a very good gas locker. The gas hob and grill doesn't gimbal, so think of what I would do is fit a spirit stove in this case. Bilge pump to port, and then the stern tube and stern gland. It's got a very nice halyard coupling, shaft coupling, anti-vibration coupling, which is here. Those are really good. Seacocks, quite typical, they corrode. There are some steel bits inside seacocks which rust, but you need to strip them down and service them. These copper drain seacocks operate, so they're fine. That's the stern gland, which is not original, it's a Volvo stern gland, and it's been sort of bodged onto the stern tube, and there should be a stuffing box on it instead, so it should be a greaser type. Checking the gearbox oil, making sure that the O-rings on the gearbox dipstick, that's all fine. So that stern gland there should be a greaser type stuffing box stern gland. That Volvo stern gland will work, but it's actually fitted onto a threaded part of the stern tube. That's the greaser for what used to be the stern gland, but it's been removed. So what that's doing now is just squirting grease into the stern tube instead. Nice interior, lots of hardwood and plywood, not much fiberglass, or none actually. They're very small inside these sort of yachts because they're designed on the basis of a wooden boat, so really a copy of a wooden boat. Looking at the seacock hoses for the toilet, checking for leaks around windows. It's really important to check the bulkheads inside a yacht to make sure that they're not rotting, and make sure that they're properly tabbed and attached on rebondings to the inside of the hull. But windows leak on boats all the time. Anchor chains let through water, and so leaks and water damage is a very common serious fault. That's the seacock for the engine coolant intake, which is corroded, and somebody's bodged a copper elbow onto it, which is not a good idea. So that seacock needs to be replaced. It's a gate valve and it's corroded due to dissimilar metals between the brass and the bronze and the copper. Bilge is nice and dry. It's got a modern 1GM10 Yanmar engine, which is good. So single cylinder, 9 horsepower, 4-stroke diesel, which is actually a really nice little engine. A little bit underpowered, but the boat's only 28 foot and long keel, so it's enough for the boat. they're very reliable, good engines, but a bit rattly. That's the isolator switch, so I'm not going to start it. That's the pump to pump out the galley sink. So it's not a bilge pump, it empties the galley sink, because the freeboard on a long keel yacht is quite low, so therefore the seacock outlet is actually not very far below the waterline. Always a bit of a pain finding dipsticks, because they're always in the worst place you can have them on engines. That exhaust elbow is looking a bit corroded, but that's quite a common problem on engine exhausts. That's the water tank below the saloon sole. That's all good. It's got an encapsulated keel, so it's lead ballast encapsulated inside the long keel. The sole boards are dry and fit very easily because the interior of the boat's dry, so the woodwork hasn't swollen up. Softwood bungs, some fire extinguishers that are older than I am, I think. So that's a Halon, so that is an aircraft type fire extinguisher, and you can't use those anymore. They're quite dangerous. They strip all the oxygen out of the air, and they're quite poisonous, so that needs to be disposed of. And the other fire extinguisher is quite old, so it needs new fire extinguishers and a new fire blanket. Dry powder is really the only appropriate fire extinguisher type in a small boat. You can't use carbon dioxide because it will suffocate you if it leaks. There's not enough ventilation. So solar panel, which is blocking the light out in the fore cabin, always a bit of a problem, but you can see how the light is shining through the deck there, because the deck is very thin fiberglass. That solar panel's quite old, so probably doesn't work. We know it doesn't work because the batteries were flat. It's a Lavac toilet which relies on vacuum, so it has a rubber seal around it, around the lid and around the seat, and so when you pump the seacock, or when you pump the handle, occupational hazard, dirty toilets, hate them. So when you pump that pump there, it creates a vacuum which ejects all the contents of your toilet. So I'm testing for the vacuum to make sure that the seals are in good condition. I'm closing the seacock now, and I can't open the lid because the vacuum is very, very strong. Then you open the seacock and then the vacuum will disappear. Looking at the hoses, they go right up to deck level, and that will help prevent a siphoning effect, stop the boat filling up with water through the toilet. You can still buy Lavac toilets, they're still made. That's the tonnage, and that's the official number, which are carved into that transverse beam, into the carving plate. So that's the registration number, the registered tonnage and official number, which would have been done by Lloyd's Register, and it's now the British Registry of Shipping. Looking at chain plates, making sure that there's no bulging or evidence of leakage. Looking at the compass, which you put below because it's ancestral, so it's quite a nice thing. You don't want it left out. looking at bulkheads, making sure that they're not rotten and that the tabbings aren't coming away. There is a bit of parting there where the tabbing or the bonding is peeling off due to water ingress, and it looks as if the bulkhead is becoming wet, so you've got to stop and prevent leaks. The rest of the bulkheads were all fine, and this is actually a very nice boat for considering it's as old as I am. It's 1965.